Take it away.
Cool. Hello, everyone. My name is Corinne Bendersky. I'm the Energy Program Manager at IBSO. We're a shareholder advocacy organization, so we represent investors and we engage with a variety of companies. In my role, I work with energy companies, so everyone from electric utilities to companies that are fracking for natural gas, and we create business case arguments to transition to efficiency and renewable energy. And so, when you think about your investments, and being at university, which has a lot of money, it makes logical sense to invest in your own campus to address our climate challenge, reduce energy use, increase renewable energy, and also just kind of reduce resource use just in general on your campus. So this presentation is about green revolving funds. And throughout the presentation, I'm going to kind of let you guys know what is a green revolving fund, why choose one on your campus, kind of the anatomy of a revolving fund, and 10 steps to a successful revolving fund. And then we'll leave some time at the end for Q&A. But some parts of this presentation can be a little bit technical because it's kind of finance focused, so feel free to stop me and ask any questions if something's not making sense. Just raise your hand and I'm happy to explain. So I wanted to kind of get a sense of, does anybody know what a revolving fund is?
You want me to say it?
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure, but I think it's like a big pot of money that's just somewhere, and then the interest coming off that money is used for projects to like reduce carbon.
Yeah, so that's great. So that's like how I like to think about it, is you create this pool of money that is dedicated towards projects on campus that reduce resource use, like, building retrofits, or, changing out pipes for water, or actually reduce greenhouse gas emissions through putting renewable energy systems on facilities. And kind of a key characteristic of it is that you measure your cost savings in terms of your utility bills, so the money that you save on your energy costs or your water bills. And part of that money goes back into the fund, and it revolves, and then you can make more green investments on your campus. So the key criteria for a revolving fund are that they must finance measures that reduce resource use, so energy, water, waste, or mitigate greenhouse gas reductions, so renewable energy systems, solar, wind. And the fund must revolve, so at least some portion of the cost savings generated by reducing operating expenses are required to be repaid to the fund, which then provides capital for future projects. And so why would you want to do a green revolving fund on your campus? Anybody have any thoughts? Yes?
Because it'll be like a positive feedback loop, they'll just keep going.
Yep. Anybody else?
It's for the long term,
Yep.
So not just for you at that time, but your future students.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Kind of reinforces energy saving in large institutions. It's a big step. It's pretty a large investment, and it just encourages people to do it for themselves or do it in their businesses.
Yep.
Yes, it's more effective than trying to get individuals. By affecting a whole institution, you're going to get a more sizable reduction in, greenhouse gas emissions or whatever other metric you use.
That's right. Those are some great. Those are great. Those are exactly right. And some of the things that I like to think about for green revolving funds are that it really demonstrates and builds the business case for sustainability. So a lot of times on universities, they think of retrofits as an expense. It's like a one-off, oh, we're going to change all the light bulbs, one-off, that'll be done. But what revolving fund does is it changes the notion of energy efficiency or retrofits or resource reduction from an expense to an investment. And by tracking the savings, you actually show that it's a good investment. And in fact, the Sustainable Endowments Institute, which I highly recommend you check out because they are the experts on green revolving funds and have tons of resources. They did a study kind of looking at the landscape of green revolving funds on a variety on campuses across the country, and they found that the median return on investment for a green revolving fund was 28%, which is kind of uncanny when you think about the endowment. The past year, the annual returns were around 6 to 8%. So when you're looking in the 20s, that's a great investment, and it really builds this business case for sustainability. You also have opportunities to engage and educate the campus community. You can bring in a variety of stakeholders, from faculty to students to facilities managers to sustainability officers, all working on analyzing the campus and finding out where there are opportunities to save money and also reduce energy use or greenhouse gas reductions or water use. And somebody said it creates a programmatic approach that really leverages kind of savings into opportunity, and it also kind of you can seize new fundraising opportunities. So schools really like to talk about their LEED buildings, and everything that they're doing that's really sustainable. And what that does is it attracts different donors and alumni to give more money to the school, which are all positive things that universities want. The case for a green revolving fund there's just a lot of reasons why you want to do it. So the anatomy of a green revolving fund. I'm going to spend kind of the bulk of my time on this slide and another one. These are the kind of core attributes of a green revolving fund. The first is the seed capital. Where does the money come from? Somebody earlier mentioned that in some cases it's done through student fees. That happens. And if you want to join your campus, they advise to make sure that you poll the students to make sure they're comfortable with that. But the majority of revolving funds, the seed capital, comes from operating budgets. So from utility budgets, facilities budgets. It can also come from the endowment. It can come from a variety of places, and it can come from a hybrid of different places. And the thing that's great about green revolving funds is it's a model that's highly customizable for your school. The next, once you determine your capital and the amount of capital that you're able to raise for the fund, where it comes from, you set this capital aside, then you want to think about your accounting systems. So how does the money kind of flow? And there are two main models for it. There's the loan model and the accounting model. And so the loan model, you have the fund and you loan out the full amount of capital for a project, and the project recipient will then manage that fund, the entire project, and they'll pay back that loan to the fund based on some agreed upon criteria. The other model is an accounting model. It gets kind of complicated. It's like line items on various different budgets that they allocate towards these projects. The loan model is just a lot more straightforward, but depending on the university, there are two ways to do it, and those are the two main ways. Then there's fund oversight. Who is responsible for this fund? In many instances, there are committees that represent a variety of stakeholders on campus, from students to facilities managers to administrators to sustainability directors. It could be housed in the sustainability department. It could be run by students. It's really can be whatever you want it to be, but it's important that there is some sort of oversight of this fund to make sure that the projects are coming through and that they're meeting the goals of the fund, and that the savings are being tracked. I mean, there's a lot of details associated with these revolving loan funds and projects that they're financing, but it's important for there to be a group or a dedicated staff person that is responsible for overseeing it. And then fund operations and project selection. I mentioned there's a lot of details associated with running these funds. It's good to kind of have those spelled out in a charter or in another way, so that everybody understands how the fund works and how projects are selected. What are the criteria? What are the goals that the fund is trying to meet? Are they trying to reduce greenhouse gas reductions? Are they trying to engage the campus community? Are they trying to save money? It really depends on what is important to your university, but it's important that the project selection criteria is established and the process for reviewing those projects. So whether it's a competitive process where students will submit, or students or anybody on the campus, frankly, will submit a project proposal, and there's a competitive process for selecting that, or there's a pipeline of projects that's created from, facilities manager who has a wish list of projects he wants to do, or an energy audit that determines, what are the best projects to get started. So you just kind of want to outline how you select projects at the outset and the criteria for selecting them. And then there's the measuring the savings. This is a really important part of understanding the energy use on campus and the cost savings that you can generate from revolving funds. And so there's two ways to measure your savings. You can either forecast the amount of savings that you anticipate based on the technology and the usage patterns in the facilities, and make a determination of payback timeline and amount, and use that to measure your savings and to pay back the fund. Or you can actually install sub-meters on all of your facilities and track these kinds of things in real time. So it really just depends on the university. I went to a conference recently, and there was a gentleman from Caltech who runs their revolving fund, and they forecast everything in advance, and then they sub-meter it, and they've got really kind of engineering specific technical details associated with their funds. They have a hybrid approach, and all universities do it differently. It just really depends on what makes sense for your campus. And then long-term strategy. How do you keep this thing going? How do you connect it to the campus? How do you make sure it's associated with sustainability plans or climate action plans? You really want to ensure that this fund is available for future students and in perpetuity, essentially. So this is kind of the anatomy and practice. Iowa State University, they got their seed funding from President's Administrative Funding. Just for example, it's overseen by the Director of Sustainability, so there's one dedicated staff person, but it's advised by an advisory committee. They use the loan model. There's a 5-year payback requirement. That's something that they judge all of the projects that come through the door based on. And their repayments are based on estimated savings, but they're confirmed with measurement and verification. So they do kind of a hybrid approach like Caltech. So 10 steps to a successful green revolving. Is there any questions before I move into this slide? Yes. So
are the projects that are done by students, or are they done by you bring people in for energy saving projects themselves?
It varies. Often it's important to identify the proper stakeholders that should be involved. A lot of cases, students are really involved in the projects, but you're also going to need the buy-in of facilities staff and energy managers who know their buildings, know where the opportunities are, as well as administrators and other kind of interested parties. But there are a lot of instances where students are involved, or they build a curriculum around a project where they use the revolving fund to finance it. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. It's a great opportunity for students to use money to do a project on their campus if you're interested in, actual projects. Yeah, can I answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're talking about measuring your savings, could you explain the second option that wasn't forecasting it? You just track it as you go, or?
Yep. So what they do is they install sub-meters on facilities, and that will determine your baseline energy usage, and then also after the project has been implemented, the savings that you're generating in real time. And they determine, check it once a month, check it once a quarter, and based on the utility savings, essentially, that you're getting in real time, that's what you use to repay back the fund. Rather than estimating it at the front, kind of it's actually, depending on how it actually works.
Okay, so you're measuring what you're feeding back.
You're measuring the actual cost savings that are happening in real time. Okay, so I'm going to move on to this slide. These are the like I said, this is a really highly customizable model, and that there are these 10 steps that have been kind of noted for being really important to making sure that you have a really successful green revolving fund. First one is do your homework. It's really important to kind of understand how your university's accounting structure works, how money moves around, because when you do a energy efficiency project, for example, the money that's saved is from a utility budget that's housed, say, in a facilities department. So it's important to understand where that money savings is going so that you can take that money and put it back into your fund. So you really kind of want to understand the unique accounting and stakeholders on your campus, as well as what some peer institutions are doing that are of similar size. If they have a green revolving fund, just kind of see how they did it. It kind of helps to build a case to your university. You can point to another school that's doing it, universities like that, and you can get them competitive. Then you select your model. Are you going to do the loan model? Are you going to do the accounting model? What are the goals of the fund? What are the project criteria? You really want to think these things through. And the general advice is to come up with a proposal and get buy-in from different stakeholders and use that as a starting point and make sure that everybody who will be affected by the revolving fund or who benefit from it is involved in kind of shaping the model for your university. And then you want to assess opportunity and run the numbers. So this is a good opportunity to get in touch with your energy and facilities staff. Often universities have done energy audits, and there are a variety of projects that are on these audits of what can be done, what are the low-hanging fruit, as well as just a wish list for some of these facilities people. I mean, they're dealing with tightening budgets, but they still have to operate these facilities, and they may have a lot of projects that they've been cooking up and want to do, and this is a good way to kind of ally with them and figure out what those projects are. And then run the numbers, see what you think the project will cost, and how long it'll take to repay the loan. Really think about these things so you have a general sense of what your fund is going to be like, and what are some of the projects that you can implement. The next thing is to build buy-in, and you want administrative support, you want facilities support, you want sustainability into it. Whoever is going to be involved in a revolving fund on campus, from student groups to the president, it's really important that you bring them in and you make them feel like they're a part of the process, because that will lead to a stronger fund in time. Then you need to secure the money, and that's always kind of a tricky dance to play, but it's doable. There are a lot of places that you can find money. I think I mentioned a lot of them before, but operations, money, endowment, there's some unused funds and budgets. Some administrators have special budgets that they have kind of sitting around for doing things. Sometimes, when universities are a little bit more hesitant to start a revolving fund, what they'll do is they'll use savings from a project that they're already doing to start the fund, and it'll be a small amount. And once you demonstrate the success of the fund, then we'll grow it. So there's a variety of ways to find money, but you got to find the money. Then you need to figure out the financial flows. So like I mentioned, the accounting, how that works, who is responsible for redirecting the money from that's saved from the utilities budget and putting it back into the fund. Who's responsible for it? How much? When are these payments made? There's a variety of criteria that you really want to think through, because this is really the nuts and bolts of financing and how the money revolves. Then you want to launch and manage your fund, and you want to launch it in a really big way. You want the university, all the university campus, to know what you're doing, and that there is this really great fund, and how you can be involved in it, and really make the campus really excited about these things. It's a really great opportunity to make a difference that you can see on your campus. So you launch it, and then you manage it, getting the project going, working with the right people, having a committee that meets every so often, whatever it may be, but you determine that and manage the fund. Then you implement the projects. And that's kind of when you're going to run into some obstacles. Things don't always, go according to plan, and the way you manage that, especially early on, will be really important in optimizing your funds in the future. Then you track, analyze, and then you assess your performance. And I mentioned there's a variety of ways to track your performance and analyze it. And obviously, you want to see, are our projects performing? How are they performing? How are they performing against some of our peer institutions? Was this a good investment? And for the most cases, they are. And then you want to optimize and improve. And this is kind of a living model. And every year, or every however often, you want to make sure that you are continually making it better, so that it's strong and a vital resource that will be in perpetuity for you. Any questions? Yes.
I have a question, but I'm not sure if I should save it for the end. It's sort of a general question, not about necessarily one of those steps that you just talked about. So maybe I'll wait.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry.
No worries. No. Any questions or? Okay. So this is just kind of a sampling of some green revolving funds, and you see the first one was started at Western Michigan University in 1980. They've since done 101 projects with 47% ROI, which is uncanny. And funds range in size from Swarthmore, which has 43,500, to Harvard, which I think now is the biggest, which is 12 million. Yes.
Can you explain the return on investment?
Sure. So essentially, it's a way to calculate how well your money has performed. So you spend X amount of dollars for a lighting retrofit, and it's the amount of money that is saved over the course of that project will give you your return on investment. Does that make sense?
So is that over like 5 years, or how long will it invest?
It depends. It depends on how you calculate it. It could be an annual return on investment. It could be over the whole life of the project. It could be aggregated for all of the projects, and it's done on an annual basis. I think for the most part, it's done on an annual basis.
So like the fund grows like a substantial amount each year?
It can, depending on how you determine to establish your fund. So you can say that 100%. So you loan out money, they pay back that money, and you can just say, okay, you can pay back 100% of the loan, and then you're done. And then you just get to experience cost savings.
I see.
Or you say, okay, you have to pay interest, so you have to pay an extra 10%. But the return on investment will be more associated with the money that's saved through the project. Yeah. And so how well those investments perform. Yes.
So I think my question fits in here. It's about scale, and basically, like, this being one form of reinvestment in the divestment campaign. Can you speak to scale a bit in terms of how big of a part this can play in reinvestment? And does it vary from, obviously it varies from university to university, like there's so much variance here in terms of 12 million for Harvard versus 43,000 for Swarthmore. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So as you saw, we've been really involved in helping to kind of establish and support the divestment reinvestment movement. We advocate a reinvestment strategy that is 5% in green investments, and that's split between green revolving funds and actual clean tech investments through private equity, public equity, and a variety of other ways. And I think that green revolving funds are a really important part of universities' reinvestment strategy because you're actually investing in your own campus's impact. It's direct.
Yeah.
In terms of scalability, it really depends on your campus and what the opportunities are for cost savings. You want to make sure that you match the amount of money that's in your fund with the types of projects you're going to be able to do. And it ranges from institutions. If you don't want to create so much money or too little money, and then there aren't projects that fit that criteria.
So you said 5%. Let's say we divest all our money from fossil fuels and we're building a green portfolio. As you so saying, 5% of that portfolio should go towards green revolving funds.
So we're saying that 5% of your entire endowment which is currently what we estimate them to be invested now in fossil fuels, redirect that 5% minimum. So there's $400 trillion in endowments collectively. We thought it's
Billion.
20 billion, no, 400, yeah.
Billion, I think.
Billion,
Yeah.
sorry. So 20 billion we're shooting for green investments. And that's spread between on-campus projects as well as through endowment, kind of more traditional investment.
Got it. Got it.
That's our strategy, but I think that it really is dependent on your university and what your priorities are.
Because when you see an ROI like that, you're like, why don't we invest as much as we can? But obviously there's limits to how much.
Yes, there are. I mean, you have a campus, and you can only do as much as you can on campus. But that being said, I think there's a lot that can be done. It's all about assessing the opportunity and finding the projects and keeping a pipeline going so these things can continue. Yeah.
Is there ever a case where they run out of projects? Or the projects that are left don't generate a whole lot of savings because you've already, it's like a logarithmic curve, you've already hit the big ones, so then it just comes to like, you know.
Yeah, there's definitely the low-hanging fruit, and then it gets to a point where it gets more complex and the cost savings are smaller, and absolutely. I haven't seen that come up at any institution yet, but I think that this is still relatively new in terms of its popularity, and I think there's a lot of aging infrastructure on campuses that could use the money now. Maybe in 20 years it'll be different, but at the same time, these projects have a useful life too. So, once you change out all the light bulbs, 10, 15 years, you're going to have to replace them. So, yes, there are the low-hanging fruit, and the further you get into your process, it may be harder to find projects, but I think that they're still there, and we just have to be creative and let universities be a place of innovation, which is what they're intended to be. So, yeah.
Is there a website that has those stats?
Yes. Yes, and so I have this later in my
Okay.
slide. Yeah, there's, like I said, the Sustainable Endowments Institute, they've launched a $1 billion green challenge. They're trying to get universities to start revolving funds, and so they have developed a variety of resources. They did a report a few years ago, maybe last year, Greening the Bottom Line. It was a trends report that looked at all the universities and does a lot of kind of analysis on size of the funds, where the money comes from, their ROI, common obstacles. They also wrote an implementation guide that gives you the details on how to do it. They have case studies of different schools. They have a database currently, it's called the GRITS database of revolving funds at different schools that kind of tracks and analyzes performance for schools. So a lot of resources available. And I have the contact information for people at SEI. We're happy to provide that. So speaking of facts, here are some fun facts about revolving funds. We just had to change the number. There are now 83 revolving funds, so the private-public numbers don't add up anymore, but okay. There are 31 states represented, which is pretty good. More than half our country has green revolving funds on campuses. The smallest fund is $12,000 at Bucknell, and the largest, not Harvard, it's actually University of Vermont, which is $13 million. The median is around $400,000. The average is around $1.4 million. The ROI, so the return on investment, the minimum is 20%. The maximum, 57%. Pretty darn good. Median is around 28. Better than endowments perform, no doubt. And then the payback period, the average is around 4.4 years. It doesn't take very long to repay these loans. Yeah. Question and answer. Katie.
Is this happening outside of universities as well, like municipalities or anything like that?
Yes, they do it in different ways. Municipalities, they usually they set bonds, which create, which you invest in and then they implement on campus. I know that There are efforts of trying to do this in cities and states. This is a great model. Healthcare institutions are looking at this model. I know SEI is trying to get the foundation community to start creating green revolving funds and potentially do community projects. Their financing. It's just a really customizable model. It can be used in a lot of different sectors, and it's starting to. You next.
I kind of missed the beginning, so I'm kind of confused on the basic of what a green revolving fund is.
Yeah. So, what is a green revolving fund? It's an internal financing mechanism that creates a pool of money to finance energy efficiency or other resource reduction projects on campus. The savings are tracked and used to repay the fund, replenish the fund to use for more projects in the future. Here's the key criteria. Yeah.
And then does it have to be? Do you have to get the loan from the school administration, or can it be from like an asset business?
It can come from a variety of places. The most common is from inside the school, the operating budget, but you can also create the fund through foundation grants or alumni grants. Wherever you can find the money is great. But mainly it's done with operations money. And we're advocating it, as you saw in SCI, we're writing a paper on the opportunity of using endowments as a source of seed capital for green revolving funds. So it can come from a variety of places. Just kind of depends on your university. Oh, did you follow?
Yeah, and then do you need like some kind of business plan when you present it to them first?
Yes, it's always good to come prepared with an idea of how you want your fund to operate, building buy-in with stakeholders on campus. Really want to think through the details before you bring it to administrators, because ostensibly you're trying to get them to allocate $1 million into doing a variety of projects. So you want to think through the dynamics of that fund when you present it. Yeah.
So I recently did research on BPI, which is an eco label that also is involved in municipal composting. You guys might have heard of like post composting. And one of the things they have been doing is increasing the amount of products that are compostable, which has had a dramatic effect, especially in Portland, which is one of the most eco-friendly cities in America. But Portland itself, they have reduced like how much waste they make, such that they don't have weekly trash pickups anymore. Like they are a fund that has helped cities invest in composting and biodegradability, and we have to invest less in picking up trash, even like the facilities we need for trash, and that's the kind of like as you so seems to encourage universities to do that, but it's all over the globe, really. Like I was researching just compostability in America, and then Germany is outstanding. All of their programs are things need to be compostable. Like that is the norm, and so I don't really see an ending point for this, really.
And it's good to have money to do these projects. And that's what's really great about these funds is that you can determine projects like composting on your campus or in your community or in a community in a different country. When you can apply this model to finance that project and to continue financing those projects so that we don't need, curbside pickup ever. There's a lot we can do to reduce our impact, reduce the resources that we use. And we've only, hit the tip of the iceberg, and I think we're moving in that direction. And I think money is a really important a way to make that happen.
Maybe I also missed in the very beginning, but I'm curious why you got into this organization.
Yeah, so let's see. I graduated from UC Santa Cruz in 2009 in the midst of the financial meltdown, and was really interested in moving up to San Francisco. I'm from LA originally. I wanted to go to San Francisco. I wanted to work for an environmental nonprofit, and I wanted to work on energy issues. But there were no jobs. So I took on an unpaid internship with an environmental consultant, which led me to a social media company where I became kind of the right-hand woman to the COO, who ended up getting brought on to As You Sow. And I was brought on as his kind of project manager, executive assistant, and the energy program was just kind of being developed when I was brought on, and I just expressed a lot of interest in it and tried to get involved in what was going on. And I moved from project manager to program manager, and then from program manager to the energy program manager. And that's where I am today. And actually, I am going to be leaving As You Sow in mid-June. I'm actually going to be a Cal student. I'll be at GSPP, Goldman School of Public Policy. So if anybody is on this campus wants to do a green revolving fund here, we should talk. Yeah. So my advice for people looking for jobs is look for unlikely paths and take whatever opportunities present themselves. Internships are a great way to get a foot in the door. And when you're in the door, really express interest and really push for what you want to do in a way that is sensitive to the organization's needs. And it can really take you to where you want to be. I feel like I got really lucky, worked really hard, and it paid off. Yeah.
Well, it seems like you're very knowledgeable in the accounting, financing aspects. So is that your background? Is that what you majored in, or did you just
I was an environmental studies major. I focused on energy and climate change, not as much on finance. I've always liked math. I took econ classes, but I picked up a lot of this stuff on the way. And people ask me finance questions, and I'm like, how did I become the go-to person for that? But you really pick up a lot along the way, in your job and who you work with. And I just got really into green revolving funds, and so I just started reading all the material out there and asking questions. Don't be afraid to reach out to any organization. Just shoot an email. We love questions, and we love it to engage with people that are interested. So, yeah.
So I have a question on the return on the investment. Is that determined by the efficiency of the projects, or is that kind of determined by the actual initial agreement that like this amount of money is going to be returned to the institution for what we put forth in the beginning?
Yeah, you can calculate it in both ways. So, how well is the fund performing in terms of what's investing and how quickly money is coming back into it, so over the payback, or for the specific project, how much money are you saving, and how is your money performing for that specific project. So it depends on your criteria and what you want, but it can go both ways.
So is it something that the institution would look at as like making a profit for them almost?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it is a profit. It's your investment. You made money. You started with this amount of money, and you added this much on top. And the difference is your return on investment.
So the not that entire portion, the difference, not the entire thing, would go back into the fund. Would some of it be cut out for the institution?
It depends on how you structure your revolving fund. It's really different on different campuses. It depends. You can do it a bunch of different ways, and I kind of just said that again. But like in some cases, they'll have you pay back 100% of the loan via the energy savings. So you transfer the money that you're saving on your utility budget to pay back the loan. Once it's paid 100%, then cost savings are just cost savings. Some cases they charge interest, so they put the 10% in addition on it, and that will go back into the fund, and then there's just cost savings. It really depends on how you want to structure it for your university. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm wondering if there are any studies or any data out there that reflect like infrastructural, like a campus is, how green a campus is and how much they have invested in green revolving funds. So you can go up to your own administration and say, check this campus out, they're like leading the way because largely they're invested in green revolving funds.
Yes. So there have been some reports that have been done by the Sustainable Endowments Institute, greening the bottom line, which is on the left. That is a trends report. So like I said, they looked at all the different revolving funds in the U.S. and did a lot of interviews with people that are running them. So there's a lot of good insights on issues and opportunities associated with them, the size of funds, when they were started, how they're set up, their return on investment. So there's a lot of information about other schools and what they've done. They also have case studies on specific schools, and this database that I mentioned that displays the information in a really good way. So it's a good way to kind of look at the landscape, and it helps to make your case to the university. In terms of studies for where the opportunities are on campuses, I'm sure there are studies out there that have kind of done this generically, kind of looking at infrastructure and various other places. For your campus, my suggestion would be to talk to the people that manage the facilities. In many cases, under climate action plans or sustainability master plans, they'll do an energy audit or a resource audit of the university, and there is a kind of just a gold mine of opportunities for projects.
And that's the research you're talking about. So when you go to the administration, you can show them the opportunities.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I guess also a couple of things to add on to what you were saying down there in front. You could like make a resolution. You could say like, whereas save money, whereas environmental sustainability is imperative, whereas these guys are right? And that those all can all go into a resolution and say resolve that. We do green revolving fund for this project and stuff like that.
Is that how you recommend, like write up a resolution?
You could do it that way, or you could write up a project proposal on the Green Billion. Yeah, greenbillion.org. They've got a lot of sample proposals and resolutions that could kind of help you get started. But yeah, that's a great way to do it, to kind of get student support, to show the student power, to demonstrate that there's willingness on campus to do it. You could talk to facilities people, faculty, administrators, and just kind of get internal buy-in and present a proposal to kind of the powers that be. But I think a resolution is a really great way to start it, and there's some sample proposals out there on greenbillion.org, and they're happy to help you craft ones for your school too. Yeah. Yes, other question.
So, like, just kind of an example, at Imperial College, they're remodeling the cafeteria, and I've been really, really involved trying to get LEDs and like skylights put in, and it's kind of an interesting issue because there's like three, things you got to do with. The roof is actually not in jurisdiction, but the dining hall is, and then there's also a portion that's part of the that's the jurisdiction of the cafeteria company. So we have to work with all these elements, and then you have to kind of create a vision. And the doing your homework part is like the most important part, because you're going to end up dealing with people who want to do the logical thing that can save you money, and if you can't have a solid proposal to them, like I was paying on the person to actually come forward with the proposal, so I was like, okay, somebody's going to do it. And then they came and they're like, sorry, I didn't do it, but you guys should still do LEDs because there's mercury and fluorescent. And they were just like, oh man, and then boiled down to like, well, we're going to do it because this is the way we want it to look. They want you to go on spectrum. And in 10 years or so, when fluorescents are phased out, there's not enough reason to do it now. LEDs could cost less
later, you know. But then again, what I'm thinking, you know, this is like, why don't we take, you know, we have estimates how long they would last from pre-condition now. And these things, the LEDs will last like 50 years, no maintenance. The fluorescents are the same story. And with that model, you can say, hey, calculate the cost of your fluorescent lights and calculate the costs, the LED's initial cost, and the maintenance cost, and power saving cost. Put all those numbers together, weigh them out, give that person who's leading the project a logical reason to go forward with, you know, this and have it put into a program like a Revolving fund. You know, that's what I'm thinking.
Absolutely, and one of the things that most, and if not all, revolving funds do, is that when a project gets selected, it actually gets selected based on a really detailed proposal that includes the technology specification, you know, the vendors who are going to do the construction, the cost savings, you know, all the different nuances associated with the specific project. You do your homework, which is exactly right. That's, you know, number one, most important step. And you put all that information into the original proposal. You get a committee to review it and to, you know, a committee of stakeholders who are involved in it to review it, to add to it, to make sure it's the best proposal possible. And once it gets selected, then you know it's based off of the best thinking. And that's what's a great thing about the Green Revolving Fund is that you can stipulate, you know, what type of information you want to include in your individual projects so that you do all this thinking up front. So absolutely, I think that's a really smart, yeah.
Do you have these slides available online or something? Or?
I don't, but I can give you my...
Yeah, I think what we're going to try to do is get all those slides from all the workshop presenters and put them in a Google Drive so that everyone can access them. We'll try to do that for you guys and send the email out to the full listserv so that everyone can access those. Yeah. And this whole thing was live streamed, so you'll be able to see it on YouTube after the fact as well.
Any other questions?
Oh, we have a question.
One more.
So there's something similar to this at UC Santa Cruz. It's called the Carbon Fund.
Okay.
But it's kind of just meant to give to students to like try to do energy efficiency projects. But I don't know if it actually saves money in the long run, you know, and it's really hard to like assess if the projects are really going to save money. Do you have any things about like the fund oversight and like any ideas? Like, is it more like staff people at the school and like administrators who are like this project proposal? So it's a pool to give money to people already working on campus to do projects?
Yes. The way the fund is overseen it depends on each campus, but it's important that there is a group that oversees it. The most common is kind of an executive management committee that has representation by all the key stakeholders who are going to be associated with the fund. And so they oversee the fund, they develop the criteria for project selection, they review the projects, they're tracking and assessing the performance, and they're doing kind of outreach on campus to make sure that people know, you know, how the fund's doing and that there's funding available for these projects. It could also be a sustainability director. It could be, you know, one person on campus. It could be, you know, an office. It could be housed in the facilities office. It really depends on where it makes the most sense. But there is an administrative aspect associated with these funds. It's really important that they're managed. And so in some cases, they'll levy an administrative fee to like hire a new person to manage the fund, or they'll add the job responsibility to somebody else, or they'll have a committee that has a charter that meets every so often. It really just, it depends. But there's a lot of examples of how successful funds, how they're operated, and lots of insights on how those work. And again, greenbillion.org is really the place to look. They've got all resources. Yeah.
Do you have representatives that can go to colleges and like help them get started on it, or do you have like individuals that are interested in getting involved or at least helping the first year or so?
Yeah. So Emily Flynn and Mark Orlowski of the Sustainable Endowments Institute, this is like their big initiative. So they do summits twice a year where university officials come who actually manage these funds to learn about them, to talk about how they're doing them. I just went to one at USD a week and a half ago. So they do a lot of work with the actual administrators of the fund. They do a lot of work with students. They'll come to your campus if you want them to. They're based out of Cambridge. But these two people, and feel free to email them. Mark gave me some of his cards to hand out to people. They are happy to walk you through the steps. And once a university joins the $1 billion Green Challenge, there's a lot of resources that are then available, resources and actual requirements for, like, we want to see what your charter is, and we want to see your pipeline of projects in exchange for their services. But what it does is, and I heard this from university officials, what it does is it actually forces the university to get all of their ducks in a row, and really ends up helping them in the success of their funds. Yeah, so we'll take one last question.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
I was just wanting to clarify that the Green Billion Challenge is a challenge that the Sustainable Endowments Institute is basically putting forth to help facilitate this, specifically about green revolving funds,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yes, and they're doing it in collaboration with a variety of other organizations, but they're leading the charge and creating this challenge to get universities to start these funds, because we see them as a really great opportunity to finance climate solutions on your campus.
So we're going to do it at Cal, right?
Yeah,
Cool.
we're going to do that, Cal.
Right on.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for coming, and this is you can contact me. So we have these over the next month and a half, and I'm happy to put you in touch with anybody who's interested in starting on your campus. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Corinne.
Thank you.